Hey everyone, how's everyone doing today? My name is Josh Dubois of JDStrategic, and really my mission is to really help people take control of their future. So the name of the podcast is Conquer the Mind, because I really do believe if you can conquer your mind, you can conquer anything in this world. So today, without further ado, this is my very first time doing a podcast, so I'm super excited to have Dennis Schooley on the podcast today. He is the CEO and founder of Schooley Mitchell, which is one of the franchises that I've partnered with. Him and his wife actually own and operate the business together for the last 25 years. And from what I understand, he actually has a very impressive background in sports as well. He played college hockey and he played semi-professional baseball for over 2 decades. So I'm super excited to dive into it. Dennis, I definitely appreciate you joining me today.
Well, thanks for having me, Josh. I'll talk your ear off, and you just let me know what you want me to talk about, and I'll fill the airwaves for you. How's that?
Well, I'm super excited. And I think just something that's super helpful to start off, especially, as a young entrepreneur, someone like myself, graduate from college, someone maybe even in high school, someone in college, they graduate and really just don't understand where they want to go in life, don't really have that sense of direction, maybe graduate with a degree, but still don't really know what they want to do. Can you help people understand, where did you grow up in high school? What was kind of your path? Did you go the college direction? Where did you kind of stand growing up? Did you always know you wanted to be in business? Kind of give us an understanding about where you stood growing up.
Yeah, I think probably. Well, I grew up in Stratford, Ontario, Canada, so it's a small city in the middle of southwestern Ontario, not too far from some pretty big places like Toronto and Detroit the other way. So, but that's where I'm from, and it was probably during high school that I think I took a bookkeeping course as one of the required parts of the curriculum back then, and it just really struck me that that's something I could do and I
Yeah.
liked, and so I pursued that angle. And I'm actually a CPA. Hopefully, my personality doesn't belie that. But anyway, that's my background. So I did go through a university program, and
Okay.
as you mentioned, I did play college hockey. While I was doing that, I worked for Price Waterhouse my first couple of years out in business after
Okay.
school, and I do recommend anybody coming out of school to get some kind of experience like that before they really, strike out in the path that they want. But when I was
Mhm.
28, I did go out on my own, and I wanted to make my own decisions. And
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell you that every day since has been a wonderful day, but I will tell you I've
Yeah.
never regretted making that decision, not for 1 minute. So
Yeah.
I've always had a desire to hold my own rope, so to speak, and make my own decisions, and for better or worse, just build what I wanted to build as opposed to what somebody else wanted me to do for them.
That's awesome. And what was the sports background? Were you playing in college? How are you balancing that on top of the academics? Were you kind of trying to play professionally in the athletics? Did you know you wanted to be in business in college? What did that all look like?
Yeah, I was never that good in the sports, but I mean, college hockey, it's very high level hockey, and the
I
baseball that I
bet.
played was very high level baseball. But no, I didn't have a vision to be in the major leagues or NHL. I knew probably at
Yeah.
age 18 I wasn't going to do that, but yet I love those sports, and it was tough to balance because they both demanded a lot of time year
Yeah.
round, and so did becoming a CPA and all the things that I had to do. So that's just about discipline. And I liked what you said in the beginning about if you can control your mind, you can control pretty much anything. And I
Yeah.
really took to that. It was probably my first year of university when I just came up with the most important word in my dictionary, and that was the word decide. If I
Okay.
decide I'm going to do something, no matter what it's going to take, I'm going to do it. And
Mhm.
I think that's the best decision I ever made when I was, I
Yeah.
guess, 19 years old. And I've lived with it ever since. And usually to benefit.
That's awesome. I think we got steps one and two with, it really starts with the mindset. And then, you can do the meditation, you can do the yoga, you can listen to the podcast, the self-development. But if you don't take action, you're just not going to get there. And it's really the daily action that's where it comes from. So going back to when you were at Price Waterhouse, what was that kind of like you were in the corporate world? What was kind of like that moment where you knew you wanted to kind of take that next leap of faith almost?
Well, I guess the first lesson was, you think you're pretty smart coming out of an honors business program, and
Yeah.
probably my second week in Price Waterhouse, I realized that I didn't know anything. you know,
Okay.
so those 2 years I spent, it was a great company, great people, great training, great experiences. but it wasn't what I wanted to do long term. But man, it was
Yeah.
great for learning about all kinds of different businesses. Even though it was in the sort of the accounting and the tax and the auditing area, which doesn't appeal to most people, but it
Yeah.
allowed me to learn about a lot of different areas of business, and I really
Mhm.
wouldn't trade that experience for anything. So that was really the step ladder, I guess, to get onto my own thing, and that's what I did.
Mhm. And how many years were you in the corporate world after college? And did you get your CPA right after college? And were you still playing sports during this time?
I was, and it was a difficult balancing act, I'll tell you. And that's where the discipline, that's where the decision to do it has to come from, because you've got to budget your time. You can't worry about being too tired. You just got to simply
Yeah.
set your mind to it. And it's the same in our business, in a franchise like ours. That's the whole thing. If you decide you're going to succeed and follow the program, you're going to succeed. That's it. But if
Yeah.
you're willow wallow about it, you're not. So yeah, when I was doing that, it was pretty difficult. Playing at that level of baseball when I was writing my CPA exams, and I think I got married that same year. So it was a bit of a tough year, but again, you can do whatever you set your mind to if you really are disciplined about it.
That's awesome. And what was the transition like from corporate world to franchising? I know a lot of times as an entrepreneur, trying to get things started, it's a lot of lonely nights, a lot of long weekends, a lot of time just kind of by yourself, not really sure if it'll even be worth it. So how do you even get through those tough days as kind of a young entrepreneur, trying to,
Well,
kind of have those aspirations, but not really sure what to do?
yeah, I mean, I started my own accounting firm as the first step. I didn't go right into franchising. So for several years, we built an accounting firm doing the traditional things like taxes and financial statements and things like that. But I've always been a business development guy, so we got into things like management consulting, computers consulting, and even sports consulting. I at one
Wow.
point I was a certified player agent for Major League Baseball and National Hockey League players. Now, once we
Wow.
discovered this opportunity, though, I couldn't do any of that anymore because this required full time, and so
Yeah.
I sort of withdrew from those activities, and it was really just an idea, Josh, to tell you the truth, at the time, where we decided this was something that a lot of businesses needed, and we were willing to take a flyer and go after it in a a multinational way in the United States and Canada. So it was really a decision from dust to create what we have today, which is 250 franchises and about 130 people working in our head office. So it's built from zero to that.
That's crazy. That's quite the operation. And I'm always hearing kind of in franchising that magic number is usually around 100, where, that's kind of where you see franchises either succeed or fail. What was that kind of journey like leading up to the first 100 franchises? And, does it get a little bit easier after that, or what does it look
Well,
like?
I would say to you, there's probably a half a dozen levels. That first one, of course, is the big test. And I can remember when that first person said they were going to join. I think we charged $5,000 at the time. And I can remember just high-fiving myself in the office that actually this was going to work.
Yeah.
But getting the first one is one threshold. Getting 10, that's another threshold, because now it's becoming a business rather than there's just a few. And then that 50 level, that 100 level, you're right. Then those are big markers. 50 means you've got to start growing your support staff, and you can't do it with just a few people anymore. And that 100 means, okay, now we're getting to be a business. And now I would say 250, where we are right now, is another level where it's becoming a large business,
Yeah.
in the sense that it involves more than 500 people. So
Yeah.
that's another stepping stone, I think. Maybe there's another one at 1,000. We'll see.
It's crazy.
I
And
hope we'll see. How's that?
you guys are averaging about, what is it, 9 placements a month right now?
Anywhere between 6 and 10 a month. It seems it's what's coming on board now. Yeah, and I think it wasn't like that for a long time. It was slow, methodical growth as we
Yeah.
built our system, we built our tools, all of our software, all those things. But in this last 2 or 3 years, it's become. I think a lot of people have started to understand what a great opportunity it is, what a unique business, and people
Yeah.
like you have started to see that that's a pretty cool business. I'd like to refer to that business.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. That's funny going back to the athletes, how you used to work with them. Do you ever have any athletes as franchise owners?
Not of the major sport level. At this point, no, I don't. No, we don't. There's no reason. I mean, whoever has a
Yeah.
a good business head
Right.
An athlete with a good business head is actually a very good and attractive person to us. Even though we normally need business people, we know there is discipline and desire there inside that person, or they never would have gotten that far in the athletic world. So if they've got
Yeah.
a business head as well, then we
Yeah.
would absolutely want to talk with them. Yes.
No, that's super interesting. And kind of just as a broker, just one of the candidates I'm thinking about, just in the franchising system. Can you help us as you kind of scaled the business and now you're at about 250? That's a pretty crazy progress. What was the corporate team like when you first got started to where it is now? What was the number like? How many salespeople? What was the operations team looking like?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. We just had a potluck for all of our staff yesterday, and there was 130 people on our staff now.
Oh my
And we were
God.
talking about our very first office when we'd moved from where the accounting firm was to our own, and it was really only about three of us at the time.
Wow.
And it was an old home that had been converted to a funeral home that had been then converted after that. And my very
Jeez.
first office was in the embalming room in the basement. So that was our start.
Oh
But
my God.
and probably for several years after that, we were anywhere from that three or four people up to 15 or 20. And
Okay.
that's how but then we started to really grow, and now we've got 130, and we're adding people as we add franchises, as we add cost categories to what we do. All those things that require more or support, we're just continuing to growing. So
Hmm.
it's been an evolution.
No,
Yeah.
that's awesome. And I'm super excited to honestly be a part of it. And can you help the viewers get an understanding, as you were going from corporate America to franchising, how did you even like find out about franchising? So you kind of knew you wanted to start your own business. What was kind of the appeal to franchising and how quickly was it when you started your own business to when you wanted to start franchising the business?
Well, it was sort of by providence that it all happened. And I mentioned to you that, one of the things we did in our firm was computer consulting. And so one of the clients that we had was a very successful franchise system. And we converted them from cash registers to computers back in the
Wow.
around 1989 or 90. That's so through that, I learned a lot about franchising. I
Yeah.
had already learned some contingency consulting through Price Waterhouse because we'd done some, I think, commodity tax consulting that way or something like that.
Hmm.
And it was really those things that came together by chance when we realized that we were really growing our own telecom expenses, which is the expense category
Yeah.
we started with. And we thought, well, we better take a look at this. And when we did, we realized, and the reason was because we were growing with all these computer assignments and me traveling all over for the sports business. And so we knew why the phone expense was going up, but we didn't really know why, if you know what I mean. So we had a programmer, one of our programmers, write something pretty rudimentary to tell us, okay, what's going on? So when we
Hmm.
looked at it, we realized we were paying 30% more than we should have. And we thought, well,
Okay.
aren't we stupid? And then we went, wait a minute here. If we're stupid, probably our 700 accounting clients are stupid too. And
Yeah.
so is that coming together with my knowledge about franchising along with the contingency consulting. And it all sort of came together, and we just decided that it was something we wanted to build. And that's what we've done ever since.
Yeah, it's an interesting model because especially in franchising, people think McDonald's, Subway, usually they think food right away,
Yeah.
usually the sexy franchises, but people don't necessarily think, consulting or they wouldn't think a business to business type franchise. So it's just interesting how, there are so many different models of franchising. Was it
Yeah.
when you first found out about franchising, did you kind of have that same reaction?
Well, yeah, I mean, we were probably early on. I'm not saying we were the first one in this type of business services franchise, not at all, but not a lot were around then. And
Right.
franchising itself is a distribution model. I mean, that's what it was. You distribute coffee grounds or hamburger meat or muffler parts, and
Yeah.
and it's really sort of a concentric growth from wherever that head office is, and then it goes out from there. That's the normal model. And the
Right.
model is about dominating and penetrating a marketplace through your franchise model. I mean, that's what it's all about. So
Yeah.
yeah, you're right. It didn't traditionally say consulting fits, but with us, what we distribute is training and databases and information and software tools to use. So it is still a distribution model. It's just that we don't have
Right.
to do it concentrically. We can do it broadly because of the power of the internet now. So
Mm.
That's so yeah, it lends itself perfectly to what we're doing.
Yeah, that's a powerful tool. And it's interesting how there are so many different ways to get involved in franchising. There isn't necessarily a one size fits all. There's so many different ways to get involved. And one of the things that I find so interesting about franchising is there's a lot of families involved in franchising. And I know you and your wife own and operate the business. Can you speak a little bit about how did that even all get started? I know growing
Yep.
up, I used to watch, Bar Rescue, and it was always John Taffer going in, and it was always family relationships going crazy. So it's interesting to hear, how franchising has so many actual success stories of families and getting involved in business. So can you speak a little
Yeah.
bit on that?
Well, I always say, not only is my wife Beth the good looking one, she's also the smart one. So
Yeah.
we stay sort of separate in terms of our responsibilities. I mean, we
Okay.
have regular meetings with all of our department heads and everything to make sure everything's congruent. But, I do the sales and marketing, the franchising side of the business. Beth runs the programmers, the operations side, what
Yeah.
we call the production side, all the analysts. That's what she runs and is in charge of. So we've just found a way to delineate those responsibilities, try to stay away from each other during business hours as much as we can, other than meetings. And
Yeah.
it's worked great. We've been doing it like I said, almost 25 years now. So
Yeah. That's awesome. And do you guys have like a balance where, once the clock hits like a certain time, it's no more work talk, or what does that look like? How do you find the balance?
that's a pipe dream. As a franchisor, that's a pipe dream. As a franchisee, it's not,
Yeah.
because yeah, we actually talk to our franchisees during training about that. Make sure you dedicate your time when you're supposed to the business and you'll succeed. But you know what?
Yeah.
You need to have leisure time. You need to shut it down and close your door and spend time with family and kids and whatever your recreation is. Now, don't get me wrong. We certainly enjoy our lives. We have lots of things that we do as well. But yeah, sometimes we work too much too.
No, that's awesome. And, now we still need to actually tell the viewers what is Schooley Mitchell. So, you're the CEO, you're the founder of Schooley Mitchell. So, for someone that knows absolutely nothing, what is Schooley Mitchell?
Yeah, well, we are a cost reduction consulting business, and that's what each of our franchisees does. Is they will help with our help, our support. We do all the analysis and things like that in our central office, so franchisees don't have to be experts. But basically, what we
Yeah.
do is we will help a company of any size, small, medium, or large,
Okay.
to reduce their expenses. And it's not those things that they have as their main business input, the cost of steel or payroll or things like that. If you think of
Yeah.
the gross margin line in any business, all those costs below that are death by a thousand cuts, that's what we help businesses reduce. Now, the
Mm.
model that we have is that we don't charge money to do our analysis, what we call our audits. We will take a look at those bills, those contracts, and we will provide recommendations to our clients. We don't get remunerated in any way by any vendor. We're simply looking at it from an independent standpoint. So we don't have a horse in the race,
Wow.
but we bring recommendations back to our clients and then we just share in the savings after that. So that's how it works. And
Yeah.
so therefore the client can engage us without taking a risk, because if we don't find
Yeah.
savings for them, there's no fee. But
No,
that's
that's
how our
awesome.
franchisees do it. Yep.
So you're telling me the client they don't pay anything
That's
until you
correct.
show them that you can save them money.
Well, I always say I can't make a nickel till I give you a dime.
Yeah, that's a crazy model. It sounds very attractive for someone. What is you say you work with small, medium, large businesses? Is there a certain percentage of the market that you focus in on? Is it more small? Do you have a lot of kind of large? Do you have like national relationships with any companies?
Well, we've done very large entities, and you can think of the largest companies that are out there, Ford and Pepsi and Sony and Mattel, companies like that. We've done
Okay.
work for them for divisions of
Yeah,
those,
it's
but we've
awesome.
also done the hairdresser and the car dealer and the accounting firm in every community. So,
Yeah.
each franchisee has a different set of people that they want to serve or that they've got relationships with or they want to
Okay.
start with and build from there. So, really,
Yeah.
it's the full gambit, it's every industry. One where several of our franchisees have really done well lately is just nonprofits, you know, churches and temples and mosques and nonprofits and charities. Really helpful there, because when you can create extra money for them, they've
Yeah.
got great purposes, and we share in that, of course, but we help them serve their
Mm.
parties better.
No, that's super interesting. because of the model, sometimes when you think about a candidate, sometimes they have strengths, sometimes they have weaknesses. Some candidates, they might be more management focused rather than sales oriented. Your model sounds like kind of a client favorite where it's not very sales oriented. Can you kind of speak on that a little bit?
Well, there's two things that a franchisee needs to have for us.
Okay.
One is we want them to have some kind of business experience because we need people to be comfortable talking to other business people. So our list of must-haves is either management or executive background, sales or marketing or consulting. If they've got one of those backgrounds, then they're going to be comfortable talking to other business people, very likely. And so
Yeah.
we want someone like that because we've got to talk to other businesses, whether it's the owner or the CFO in a small business or the CEO or CFO in a big one.
Yeah.
The other thing we need to know, and we'll never have an answer until they're actually in the business, is are they motivated to work the business? Because
Mm.
this model, we've got people, and I know we have to be careful in terms of what we say with monetary promises, and we won't promise anything, but we've got people that make $1 million and we've got people that make nothing and everything in between. So really the franchise that's motivated to build something is the one we're after. We just never know if they're telling us the truth until they're actually in it. You know?
Yeah. No, that's a big thing where a lot of times people think franchising and they kind of think their income levels are kind of restrained to a certain extent. They don't want to pay the royalties. Everyone thinks they want to be their own business owner. And, I know from personal experience, I'd rather kind of lean on someone that is, that industry expert to have, their resources and then be able to rely on my strengths and really allow them to carry my weaknesses. So, can you speak on kind of the aspect of franchising and how it really does
Yeah.
allow
I
someone
mean,
that they
that's
want it?
that's what the model is, Josh, right? I mean,
Yeah.
in our case, it's a professional business. Well, if you can imagine any letter, any email, any checklist, any agreement you would ever need, and they number in the hundreds to
Yeah.
run a professional business, that's in our system. It's a fingertip, a couple clicks away.
Yeah.
So if someone was going to try to develop this the way we have it developed, let alone the analytical tools that we've built, which are in the millions of dollars that we've developed over 25 years. We have 9 full-time programmers that work on that every day, so they better be doing something.
Yeah.
That is all there. No individual person can do that.
Yeah.
And if somebody wants to start a business like this and think they can do it on their own, I wish them luck. Good luck.
Right.
But none of that is there. And so
Yeah.
that's all there. We just simply train people to use it, and that's it.
Yeah. No, that's an impressive model. And it just makes sense. I just feel like not enough people really understand really what the kind of opportunity lies just in overall franchising, how there are so many different models and really your income levels aren't restrained. They're just restrained on the work you actually want to put in. Or, you don't actually even have to be very hands-on. You can put the resources in place to grow that business. But Dennis, you've been in this industry, you're an industry expert, you know the industry cold. Can you talk to me about, when you first started coming out of college to where the industry is now? What have you kind of seen? What were kind of the challenges back to when you were in corporate America? And how did you kind of change that with Schooley Mitchell? What were kind of the big problems that you saw beforehand?
Well, really just kind of going about things blindly in a sense because, we knew it was a good idea. We knew there's lots of franchise companies out there, but what you said earlier, they're usually burgers or coffee or mufflers.
Yeah.
So we were thinking we had the right model, but then we did join the Canadian Franchise Association and the IFA International Franchise Association, and there was
Okay.
a lot of great knowledge that came from those entities. Now they are much more highly developed today than they were back then. But they were a good resource to have fellow franchisors to talk to, experts in the business of franchising, whether that was from a legal or a financial or just an advisory capacity. That was a great
Yeah.
resource for us to really learn. And we do have a commitment here to lifelong learning in Schooley Mitchell, so we took that very seriously, and we've set out our protocols based on those things we learned back then, and just
Yeah.
expanded until now.
No,
So that's really what we did.
that's impressive. And do you see kind of any industry trends going on right now? Is there kind of anything that you see playing out over the next couple of years?
Well, there's some difficulty with some of the government entities in the US related to trying to control franchises and sort of a union look at things. and wages. That doesn't really affect us here at Schooley Mitchell because we don't really have a lot of employees, and certainly not inexpensive ones.
Right.
Excuse me. So that's not but as an overall effect on franchising, that's one thing that's going on. And I know the IFA is pretty serious in lobbying Congress to make sure that there is the right considerations before laws are passed by someone that doesn't really understand what's going on, is being influenced by lobbyists of maybe not the right motivations.
Right. And as you speak about government restrictions, the first word that comes to mind is COVID. What was it like for franchise owners during that time? And, a lot of times you hear recession proof. Can you speak on kind of Schooley Mitchell being recession proof, or what is it like for franchise owners during kind of those economic downturns?
Well, yeah. Okay. First, let me address the COVID, the pandemic thing. Because of the nature of our business, we were not affected by it at all, because we were, we'd have 15 different cost categories that we look at. I think I mentioned we started in telecom 25 years ago, but we look at 15, and it's soon going to be as many as 20 different cost categories where we specialize. And so one of them is, technology based. It's telecom, it's communication, it's conferencing, it's what we're doing right now. So we were already good at that, and we transitioned within 2 days of that shutdown back in March of 20 to a fully virtual model. And we led the way for a lot of our clients, teaching them how to do it. So we never lost a nickel during the pandemic period in terms of average revenue for franchisees. So that's the first thing I'll say. The second thing I'll say is, I can't tell you how often I hear a company say that they're recession proof, and they're really not at all. Unless you're selling essential goods or services, you're not recession proof. It doesn't mean it's a bad business. It just means you're not recession proof, because in a recession, disposable dollars disappear. Well, if there's no money to buy what you sell, it's not your fault. It's just the way it is. However, in Schooley Mitchell, we're 100% recession proof, because what do? We cut costs. Well, that's exactly what companies need to do during a pandemic or inflation or recession, and we don't charge money to do it. So we are truly elastic to economic conditions. And in a good economic time, people are expanding more, using more of what we consult about, and they need our help to keep that expansion going properly. So yeah, we truly are, whereas most companies really are not, unless it's essential goods.
Yeah, no, it's so funny reading about all the different services and goods that are, recession proof, or, the stock market's recession proof. And, it's just crazy,
Come
but
on, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Right. Doesn't. I had a franchise where they were doing a presentation. I just happened to be in the room. They were an eyelash company, and I thought they said they were recession proof. And I'm, come on, if there's anything gets cut out when there's no money, it's stuff like that.
Yeah. Luxury goods are always number one.
Of course.
Yeah, no, that's super fascinating. I even just think back to the pandemic with my father being a franchise owner, franchisee. That's exactly what they're looking for during those times, how to reduce their costs. A lot of times people think, employment's how you reduce costs, but if there's an easier way to reduce your costs, it just makes sense.
Well, see, that's our message to our clients. You can cut costs by cutting employees or essential things that you do, but that harms your business. Recovering from that is not easy, and it may even be detrimental and cause big harm. Whereas if you cut some costs in these other areas, just because you're overpaying and don't realize it, there's errors in your bills, you're over provisioned, or you just don't have the right prices. Now you're affecting bottom line without affecting anything essential at all. That's our main message to our clients.
No, that's a really strong model, and it's just really attractive for everyone. Do you guys work with a lot of other franchisees with your model?
You mean as clients?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Any type of business. And, certainly if you think about a franchisee and you look at the expenses they have, they might have uniforms, they're going to have office supplies, they might have waste, they might have merchant services, they might have telecom. We do all those things. So yes, absolutely. Either franchisee or groups of franchisees or even the franchisor.
No, that's awesome. Right away you think you help from a numbers perspective, but you also help from that people and culture perspective, and really just give people that full rundown of how their expenses work. When you guys walk into an operation, you mentioned you're working on 50 different services. Do you focus
15.
on what's that?
15, not 50. 15. So I don't want to mislead anybody.
15 services, everyone, which is still a lot.
Yeah,
How
yes.
do you go in focused on all those services at once? Is there one or two services that you focus in on, then you focus in on the others, or what does that look like?
It really depends on what the business wants. I mean, some businesses, they just want us to look at all of it and just save me as much as you can. Others want to start with one or two and say, look, show me what you can do with waste, show me what you can do with telecom, and then we'll talk about bringing on two or three at a time over the next year or two. We're fine
Yeah.
either way. Now, a lot of times, some businesses will have certain of the expenses and not others. So we do determine this type of business. We have a conversation with them. Which ones are most important to you? And let's start with that and focus there. There's all kinds of different conversations that take place.
Hmm. That's super interesting. And, kind of shifting gears a little bit to the territory model, typically, like we said, McDonald's, Subway, it's very easy to figure out what a territory is. How do you figure out a territory in kind of business to business consulting model?
Well, in our world, that's what we were wrestling with when we first started 25 years
Yeah.
ago. We were just doing telecom and we were trying to set out territories because every franchise has territories. And
Hmm.
then we realized, wait a minute now, telecommunications transitions borders or transcends borders by its definition. I mean, that's what it is. And so
Yeah.
we realized we didn't want to say to somebody, you can have a client in Cleveland, but you can't do the branch in Toronto or Seattle or Denver. That didn't make any sense. So we
Right.
actually don't have territories at all. So any of our franchisees can get clients
Wow.
anywhere in the United States or Canada. And that's a pretty big benefit because it says wherever my opportunities lead me, that's where I'm going to go. If you
Yeah.
got referral sources somewhere else or companies or a vacation home or multi-location clients, whatever it is. So we don't have territories. What we do is we have a registry system to protect their clients and their prospects. So they're still protected and yet they've got no restriction geographically.
Yeah, that's an impressive model where you're not really restricted. It is an insanely scalable model, and
It
it
is.
makes sense for everyone. And
Yep.
when it comes down to territory, not a territory, the worst thing a franchisee can do is give away a franchise to someone that is unmotivated. So can you help me walk through kind of how it is really a two-way interview process? You're not really looking to just sell franchises. It really is about awarding franchises and finding those motivated potential franchise owners.
Oh, 100%. And a lot of people don't accept that or understand that, but we actually reject many more people than we actually accept. Because
Okay.
it's got to be a fit. We don't want someone to come in here that doesn't have the right skill set, that isn't motivated and is not going to be successful. So we try to determine that.
Yeah.
There's no pure science to determine it, though, in our
Yeah.
world, but we try to do our best. It is a two-way decision, and we've got a very highly developed due diligence and qualification system with a number of steps in it so that both parties can really learn what they need to learn to hopefully get
Yeah.
to that informed decision to say, yeah, let's do this or let's not. And,
Mhm.
that's an important, really important part of all this.
Yeah. No, I bet. And you kind of mentioned the ideal candidate really being that executive, someone that can talk to business professionals. I've seen a couple actual recent interviews where you guys actually have veterans in the system. Does
Mhm.
everyone kind of have like that CPA background, or is there kind of other models that kind of fit the system as
Not
well?
at all. Not at all. Fact is, some accountants, they just aren't going to be the ones that are going to go and do what needs to be done. Now, I don't mean to
Yeah.
say introverted people can't be great franchise. They absolutely can. We've got systems for introverts and systems for extroverts. So that's fine. But I would
Right.
say there's a real mix of differing types of professionals in our business or management people. I mean, we've got salespeople, we've got, C-level people, we've got management people, we've got doctors, accountants, lawyers, engineers, but really we want to have somebody that's comfortable talking to other business people, no matter what their background is. If they've got
Yeah.
some of that business background, then they're a candidate we can talk to.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And, basically for someone that may be potentially interested, basically the process is, you'll talk to someone like myself, I'll get to know you, figure out what you're actually looking for. I'll present the top opportunities and then I'll present an introduction based upon really what you're looking for. And,
Yep,
a lot of times once someone is introduced, people get scared, especially nowadays. People get called left and right from salespeople trying to sell something, really shove
yep.
something down your throat. It gets frustrating nowadays. Can you help us understand how it really is an education process, not really a sales process from, right when they start, they get introduced to the franchise, understand what your franchise looks like, talk about the FDD, what that process looks like.
Yeah, I mean, I would say this, if anybody feels like a franchisor is trying to sell them, they should
Yeah.
shut it down and run for the hills because that should never be the case. That's a
Yeah.
person, that's a franchisor that doesn't really understand what this is all about. If
Yeah.
instead it's you're getting your questions answered, maybe not all at once, but through a methodical delivery of information,
Yeah.
if it's that kind of a back and forth process, that's the one you want to be involved with because they're serious about having it be a two-way decision. Now, of course, it's
Yeah.
got to be attractive to the candidate because if it doesn't make sense, they shouldn't do it. But the
Mm.
candidate has to also understand that we thrive based on bringing in the right people into our system. So if
Right.
they feel they're being sold, that means somebody's not considering that properly and they should run.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, 100%. It just goes back to the worst thing, someone like yourself can do is award territory, award a location to someone that is unmotivated, someone that doesn't actually want to grow. Brand recognition is the reason kind of why franchising is so powerful.
For sure.
You put Schooley Mitchell, you put, whatever franchise in this market, people see that, they know it. It has the brand recognition. So it just goes such a long way. So it really is that two-way process where you're going to get to know everything about the franchise, and then they're going to get to know everything about you as a potential candidate and really make sure that you are a good cultural fit.
That's right. And you mentioned brand, and there's, in our case, our brand is not like McDonald's, where it's a public
Right.
facing brand where everybody knows what it is. Our brand is not that. Our brand is with the clout and the knowledge we have with the vendors and the marketplaces that we operate in. See,
Yeah.
that's where it really exists. So the power of Schooley Mitchell, we've done at this point in time 28,000 clients over time. Well, we have all that data. We know where
Yeah.
every vendor can go for each cost category for each type of client. That's powerful brand, and that's where our brand relies or lies rather than if somebody's looking in the outside the doors and trying to see where's Schooley Mitchell, they're never going to find it.
Yeah. No, that's a really great point. And that's something that I hear a lot of times as I get on the phone with people. Someone might be in the corporate world and they want to make this transition, but oftentimes it comes with, a lot of risk. But when you have these national relationships, these distribution in place to, help people get the best, vendors, the databases, the systems are already in place so that once you get started, you just need to take action. Like we kind of
That's
said, going back to when we started, if you have the mindset and you decide to take action, you can accomplish it.
that's right. That's exactly right.
And just kind of going back to the education phase, can you walk people through? Because as people actually, once they get to know you, then you go through the two-way phase, you're going to get what's called an FDD document where people are going to get a total understanding of what their potential income looks like, the earnings claims, et cetera. And then, if that looks okay to a potential candidate, they feel comfortable with that, you feel comfortable with the candidate, then they go to what's called, a validation phase and then what's called a discovery day. Can you talk a little bit about how that process works and how, no
Yeah.
one's really asking a candidate to make a decision from day one or even, day 20. You have a full, 2-month real process to go through and really get a full understanding of what the opportunity looks like.
Yeah. And you just mentioned three important parts of the decision making process. The biggest mistake I see being made by either candidates and or brokers is
Yeah.
relying too much on any one of those processes. If you rely
Okay.
solely on your FDD review or solely on item 19, you're making a mistake. What you
Yeah.
really have to do is understand the whole thing. Does that work for me? Could I do well in this? Have other people done well? Because if anybody's done well, it's proof that I can as well.
Mm.
That's more important. Now, do you have to look at the FDD and understand the business and the franchise agreement and what's been made? Absolutely, but that's only one
Yeah.
part of it. Do you have to validate? Absolutely. Do you have to meet the people at the head office through a discovery day? Now that's mostly virtual in a lot of cases, and ours is as
Okay.
well. Those are all just steps along the way. And I wouldn't
Yeah.
say any one of them is more important than the other, along with
Interesting.
all the conversations that you have with the franchisor. So ours is a
Yeah.
real combination. We'll have 4 or 5, maybe even 6 conversations throughout time. The,
Okay.
the, the FDD, the validation, the discovery day. We have a webinar to review our system. They're all
Yeah.
steps. But the real folly is really putting, oh, well, if the item 19 isn't exactly what I expect, then this is no good. That's a crazy
Yeah.
way to look at it.
Yeah. No, it's just so interesting how really just this misconception where no one's selling you anything. It really is a full education process. You have 2 to 3 months where you're going to get a complete rundown of, the FDD, your income, your lifestyle, your impact. You're going to have a complete idea of what your future is going to look like. It's just a matter of, taking that action. So that's super interesting. And, say
Yep.
someone does make that decision, they sign the contract. What does it look like to actually get operations started? How long from, they sign the papers, how long before they have their first client?
Yeah. Well, okay. Two things. In our case, we have training classes every month. So
Okay.
whenever anybody decides I want to do this, they simply say, I want to go to that training class. And that could be in 2 weeks or 3 months,
Yeah.
whatever they choose. So that's really up to them, but there's no waiting time. We don't have to build a building and buy
Yeah.
inventory and arrange for services. Most of our franchisees work for home. A few might rent a small office, but most of them don't. So there's really no time lag there. Now, your
Yeah.
second question is how long to get a client? Well, I actually train the sales and marketing portion of our course. And one thing that I say in that training portion is I want them to get a client their very first week after training. And
Oh,
our training
wow.
is only 5 days. So the next week
Okay.
they should get a client. And a lot of our people do. I mean, some might be a couple weeks, but generally they're in business the following week.
Yeah.
There's no dilly dallying around here. And I tell people, don't be setting up your office for 3 months. Go get a client. And here's
Yeah.
how you do it.
Yeah. Just take that action, like we said. And I
That's
guess
right.
what someone would ask is how many clients does it take for someone to, be profitable? How long does it take to kind of see that ROI? What's kind of the average client base that a typical franchise owner would have?
Well, that really varies because some
Yeah.
franchisees like to deal with just a few large clients. Now, there's a longer ramp up schedule for that because it's longer to do that sale and to do the analysis. But some
Okay.
people say, I want to just serve 6 big clients, and they take that
Yeah.
road.
Hmm.
Others say, I want to do just small clients. So
Yeah.
they might have a couple hundred.
Yeah.
But even our most successful franchisees, I think the most clients anybody's ever had is around 300. Not to say that that's a limit by any means, but nobody has to go out and
Yeah.
get 5,000 clients. But
Yeah.
most of them will do a mix, some small, some medium, and a few
Yeah.
big. And that's how they'll do it because that gives them the most stability, that gives them the churn, that gives them the ramp up because the small ones get to cash quicker. That's the best model.
No, and that's a really good transition where, a lot of other misconception with franchising is people don't understand all these different participation types. And given every franchise is different, but overall, there's tends to be 4 different models from the single, multi, area rep, master franchise. Then there's 4 different participation types with the owner operator, executive model, semi-absentee, and full absentee. And from what I understand, you guys also have like a developer of 10 locations. Can you speak to just the ability to scale the Schooley Mitchell franchise?
Yeah, we actually have three options here. And
Okay.
we really only operated on one for the first 24 years because both these other options that I'm about to mention really just came to play within the last year.
Oh, wow. We
So
got breaking news today, everyone.
it is breaking news. So we knew that there were people that wanted to maintain a job. Either they
Yeah.
needed the revenue to be able to start a business, or sometimes a spouse is a roadblock, or sometimes health and
Yeah.
whatever the reason, they need to keep their job, but they
Right.
still wanted to start a business. And this is one where we implemented something we call the builder franchise, and it
Yeah.
allows for someone to do this on a part-time basis. Now, if they don't have 5 to 10 hours available to them per week during business hours, so if they need to have flexibility in their schedule to have at least that, they
Yeah.
shouldn't do it otherwise because they're not, this is a business to business service. You got to talk to business
Yeah.
people. So you have to have some time available. So we do have that part-time option.
That's
It's,
awesome.
it's not a whole lot different than the others, just a little bit more methodical and slow build up. So we have that.
Right.
The one you mentioned is what we call the developer franchise. Now, it's not an area development, it's not a master franchise. It's really just allowing someone to operate in 10 locations simultaneously, or
Okay.
they can start with one and build up to 10. So they can
Right.
pick any 10 cities they want in the US or Canada, and they can build their business in each of those locations. So
Hmm.
even though I know I said earlier there's no territories, we
Yeah.
do have a couple restrictions in where they can hire people. So if I get one franchise in Detroit, I can hire as many people as I want in the Detroit area, but I can't hire in Denver. So if I want to
Okay.
build in multiple locations, I can do the developer franchise and I can do it in as much as 10 cities at once.
That's impressive. Yeah, so it goes back to how scalable the model is, and it really is just that common sense. And as I talk to people, there's always really kind of three things that people talk about. One, kind of just going back to, when can I break even? They make this big investment. When do I get my money back? Is my investment safe? And then two, just people are concerned about labor, the employee staffing. And then three, just their ability to get customers, which you already touched on, their ability to get customers. But could you touch on just the ability to find employment, and how many employees do people typically have, and what are the employees actually doing for them?
Well, okay, so let's start there and then let's go to the ramp up question, which is related to ROI. So I would say about 75 or 80% of our people don't have any employees. So they
Okay.
operate on their own. See, we've got a leverage model built into our basic program because we do all the analysis here. Our
Right.
franchisees don't have to spend the time going through bills and tearing through contracts and doing reports. Excuse me. That's what we do. So a franchisee that's motivated to bring clients in, build relationships, consult to them about the results,
Yeah.
that's the person that can leverage this business to seven figures if they want without hiring anybody. Now,
Mm.
we do have some people, like 20, 25%, that do. And usually that's on a subcontract basis where they're just going to share, so it's their little quasi business within their franchise.
Yeah.
Um, so certainly some franchisees do that.
Yeah.
We train and support those subcontractors just like we do the franchisees. So it's quite easy for our franchisees to do that. They don't have to worry
Right.
about paying, nickel 98 employees are going to quit next week or change
Right.
jobs or, they don't
Yeah.
have to worry about any of that in our business. That's not us.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. It kind of goes back to, the sexy franchises with like McDonald's, Subway. You get labor that they might not be skilled labor, and it's hard to find talent. And even when you do find talent, to actually retain that talent is a whole nother struggle. So when it's actually 80% of business owners, you're your own employee, you control it. You're not necessarily selling something because you're helping someone save money. It really is just such a fascinating model. So,
Well,
this
I
is
always say in
super
those,
interesting.
there's a lot of models. I don't mean they're bad franchise systems. There's lots of great franchise systems, but a lot of people don't want to deal with those migrant and fickle employees that, they're not high paid. So they change jobs for another buck an hour or whatever it is.
Yeah,
Or, what happens when your baker calls in drunk at 4 a.m? Well, guess who's baking
right.
donuts? You are. Is that what you really want to do?
Yeah,
So a person has to ask themselves or wash
right.
windows, your guy doesn't
Yeah,
show up. What are you going to do? Well, the client needs the windows washed. So
right,
is that what you want to do? And an executive person has to answer those questions before they decide what model they want. So
right.
there's that we don't have to deal with that stuff at all.
No, that's a great point. And one of the biggest challenges I kind of come up with as I talk to people that are interested in that executive model, they might be in finance in corporate America. They're not looking to get their feet dirty, paint walls and stuff like that. So yeah, you need to find, that model that actually does make sense for what you're looking for. And I do want to clarify, I've brought up McDonald's and Subway as kind of these models, but those franchise owners are killing it. They're doing great. So it's nothing against them.
Oh no,
There's definitely models that are successful in everything. So I just wanted to clarify that for the viewers watching. I know I've tagged McDonald's a lot, but they're doing awesome.
oh no, and I don't mean it in that way either. But there's certain people that are not cut out for a franchise where
Yeah.
you're dealing with those people. And if
Yeah.
a professional level franchise is what we do here, we don't deal with that issue.
Right. Yeah, it just goes back to there's a model for everyone. If you're interested in food, there's a model for that. If you're interested in home services, business to business, consulting, there's so many different models. It's just really about the education process and really taking that
Yep.
first step. Can you talk to us a little bit, when people are part of franchising is actually making that investment and buying that business? What are
Yep.
kind of the things that you look for? It's usually, liquid capital, from what I understand, net worth, and then there's some sort of investment level.
Well, the investment levels in our case is just the franchise fee because there's very little cost after that. It's
Okay.
you need business cards and envelopes and a computer, that kind of stuff, but that's it.
Yeah.
Um, so in terms of ongoing costs, it's a low overhead business as well. This is even though we
Yeah.
consult about cost control, there's not much cost control needed in our business because
Right.
you're going to have things like gas and phone and lunches and coffees and things like that, but there's not a lot
Yeah.
of expense to running the business. It's about client acquisition and client relationships and
Yeah.
that sort of thing. So now the investment itself. Now the reason that we want people to have some net worth beyond just the franchise fee and some liquid beyond the franchise fee, because it's not like McDonald's where you do have a drive-through window and you have cash coming in day one. Some people think that's
Yeah.
really great because I'm making bank deposits, I'm making money.
Right.
Meanwhile, that's a 15-year payback. So but they
That's a
lose
good
sight
point.
of that. In
Yeah.
our case, you're not going to have money coming in for your first few months because you got to get a client, do the work for the client, bill it and collect it. But after that, you've got a steady flow because our clients pay us for a 3-year period, 50% of the savings for a 3-year period. So
Right.
it's very
Huh.
lucrative, and really the payback should be within the first year, unless you're
Yeah.
not working at it. So that's really how our ramp up and our ROI works.
No, that's awesome, Dennis. And can you help someone once they do start operations? What does like that day in the life look like for a franchise owner? What does, is it like a 9 to 5, Monday through Friday type role? What does kind of it look like?
Yeah, that's mostly what it is. I mean, and we tell
Yeah.
people if you're willing to work a regular work week, 35, 40 hours a week, you're going to succeed in our business if you don't stop doing it. And it's generally
Yeah.
that 9 to 5. You just are, because really it boils down to this, Josh. If
Mm.
if you're the company, I'm going to say to you, look, and we've got way better scripts than this, of course, but I'm going to say, look, you're paying more than you should for this, and that. Can I have a shot to
Yeah.
get you some money back? That's it. That's the
I'm
sales
in.
process. Okay,
Yeah.
there you go. So as long as somebody's willing to keep having those conversations with people and then setting up referral relationships, whether that's through networking or with clients or paid referrals,
Yeah.
we've got all these different tactics and strategies. As long as somebody does that kind of work, which is actually fun, you're out there
Yeah.
talking to people, interacting with people, getting to know and learn about people, you're building your
Right.
business that way. But if somebody sits at home and hopes somebody's going to call them for cost
Yeah.
reduction consulting, they're kidding themselves. So
Right.
we just have to make sure people are active. So it's a fun
Yeah.
business, but it's an out there business. And now when I say out there, I mean out there either physically or via Zoom. That's fine
Right.
too.
Yeah, it's just such an interesting model. And, as a business owner, it's just, who doesn't want to reduce their costs? And even not as a business owner, I just think about, all these apps that people have from, the Spotify's, the Apple Music, whatever apps you have, all these monthly subscriptions, they just keep adding up. If you think about something like that as just someone's personal life, think about a business owner, all those monthly subscriptions they have, if you can cut them costs, you know, count
Well,
anybody in.
you make a good point, and all these expenses that we consult about are very confusing.
Yeah.
How many different things go into the cost of a cell phone plan, a phone line, an internet connection, a you know a payment when you're accepting a payment. There's 700 different cost categories that a credit card
No.
transaction could fall into. Nobody knows
Yeah.
that. We know that,
Right.
and all the things that even go into the cost of that container to get rid of your waste. It's
Yeah.
just mind-boggling. But people just pay what they're quoted from a vendor, and they think they're in good hands, and they're generally paying much more than they should.
It's incredible, Dennis. And I know as the hour kind of wraps up, I know our time's wrapping up, and this has been incredible. I think the viewers have definitely learned a lot today. And one of the things that I wanted to bring up, I know on LinkedIn you kind of mentioned the ability for asset growth. Can you kind of speak about how, a lot of people think, they want to retire in 40 years and have that 401k saved up, but what about the ability to control your own business, build an asset, and then talk about the exit strategy a little bit?
Well, that's a significant benefit here. And I will qualify this first. Most consulting businesses don't really have a good exit strategy. They can be a great business, they can earn good money, they can get good renewals if they do a good job. But at the end of the day, you can't sell yourself, right? So
Right.
that's what most consulting businesses are. However, with Schooley Mitchell, it's more of a process driven solution. And every client we get has a minimum of a 3-year annuity attached to it. So we know there's a future cash flow. And if we do a good job with our clients, we've got a 75 or 60 to 70% renewal rate too. So we know they're long-term clients. Well, that makes it a saleable asset. And so we had one sell for $4.5 million a couple of years ago, and another one just under 2 million just prior to that. So we
Yeah.
know, and that's not like buying a building for 4.2 and selling it for 4.5. There's no cost. That's
Right.
just the clients you've built up. So, whether that's 2 years or 10 years or 40 years, like you said, that's up to the franchisee. They can sell their business anytime they want, and there's value there as long as they built up clientele.
No, it's so impressive. And, just when I think about the stock market, it's just, you really have no idea where that money's going. It's just a big corporation. Who knows, where their interests lie. So, for me personally, when I work hard for my money, I like the idea of controlling my money and I like having the systems in place to really be able to see what that picture looks like. So for me personally, it's just a very attractive model. So, this has been a really, really great time. And I think just my last question for you as we really wrap up the hour, what would you say to someone, spending a couple years in corporate America? Everyone, even just growing up, a lot of people want to be their own business owner.
Yep.
Everyone growing up just talks to their friends and is like, we'll start this, the sweatshirt company, the XYZ, whatever it may be. They think, me and a couple of my friends, well, they'll start this business and then, they get the benefits, the 401k, and, those dreams slowly fade away. But, people always start with that idea of wanting to be a business owner. So what do you tell someone that they've kind of always had that nagging, but they don't necessarily want to kind of take that risk? What would you tell that person?
Well, the first thing I would say is, there's studies done that say 70% of people do want to be in business for themselves, but only a
Wow.
very small percentage of those actually pull the trigger. And the
Right.
reason is for fear. I'm fearful of risk, and that's the issue. And I get that. And there's a lot of
Yeah.
businesses that you've either got to have a lot of money to buy or a big franchise. In this case, I'd say bet in yourself. There's
Yeah.
nothing that affects your success except you in a business like ours. There's not really much cost. There's nothing that gets in your way. We don't have territories. All those things that affect most businesses don't. So I tell them, if you want to bet in
Yeah.
yourself, this is the type of business that you want. That's what I wanted. When I was 28, I decided I'm going to bet
Yeah.
myself. I don't want to make money for somebody else. I don't want to be told where to go and
100%.
what to do. I want to make those decisions. And somebody that wants that, that's what I tell them. If that's what you want, this is what we have.
No, it's just so attractive. And, for me personally, I've just, your greatest investment is yourself. Personally, I even stopped investing into the stock market over the last couple of years and only invest into myself literally just on the daily basis, from podcasts and, finding these mentors and finding different ways to find people that do have success and invest so that I can get my foot in the door to these successful people. And, a lot of people, they would rather make these excuses that, it can happen rather than, investing a few dollars and figuring out whether it can happen. And the great thing here is that you don't have to invest anything until you have that complete picture. So I'm here to help you really take that complete risk out. And then once I hand you over to Dennis, he's going to give you that complete education process. It really just goes back to how we started with, it starts with the mindset. And then once you listen to Dennis, you take action, you make that decision to take that action. There's really nothing else that can stop you. And one thing that I just want to say as we wrap up this script, this interview, this podcast, Dennis did not ask for a script beforehand. Dennis did not ask, what questions am I going to ask? This was not scripted. This was just Dennis talking out of pure experiences. I personally, I'm not going to give names, but normally anytime I ask anyone for something like this, they want the questions beforehand and then they want someone else to proofread it and then another person to proofread it. This was strictly, Dennis just giving me his time. So Dennis, I greatly appreciate your time today. I think the viewers learned a lot about Schooley Mitchell. And, I think, like we said, just make that decision to take action. If you're someone looking for something else in your future, if you're one of those 70% that want to take that risk, I think with franchising, it's just so powerful. I think I was reading this the other day. 25% of small business owners fail in the first year, and it's, I think, 50% in the first 5 years compared to franchising, where it's 92% success rate in the first year and 80% success rate after 5 years. So it really comes down to just finding that right opportunity for you. And we're here to guide you on that journey. So, Dennis, I greatly appreciate your time. And thank you to the viewers because you're really the reason that we do this. So, Dennis, we got the first podcast kicked off. I greatly appreciate your time today.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Josh. Much appreciated.